You're not drowning because you're weak, you're drowning because the system was designed to keep you breathless. But there is a way out, and it's older than the system itself. They taught you to chase. To wake up hungry. To measure your value by how much you can accumulate before you collapse. But what if the hunger you feel isn't for more? What if it's for meaning? You were never meant to be a slave to numbers. You were meant to be a master of provision. Debt doesn't begin with a number, it begins with a lie. A lie that says you are not enough unless you have more. A lie that says your worth rises with your possessions and falls with your balance. But no lie can hold power unless you feed it. And you've been feeding it with your fear. That ends now. They hand you credit, not freedom that they promise leverage, not liberty. You wake up building castles made of plastic and promises, and then wonder why they collapse when the wind blows, because nothing built on illusion ever lasts. You knew this deep down, but comfort made you forget. You trade peace for approval. You sacrifice your future for the praise of people who won't even remember your name. You buy things to look full, while your soul starves in silence, and no one teaches you the truth. That true provision doesn't come from striving, it comes from alignment. Provision is not chasing, it's channeling. When you live by principle, resources come to you with quiet precision. But you've been living by pressure, by panic, by the illusion that if you just hustle harder, you'll finally be free. Freedom doesn't come through earning, it comes through order. Through setting your house in divine alignment. Through mastering the invisible before you touch the material. Most people drown in money not because they lack income, but because they lack vision. They don't see what they're building, because they never stop to ask why they started. Discipline isn't a budget. It's a belief that your life has value, that your time has weight, that your choices echo beyond. The receipt: you don't need more money, you need more meaning. And meaning is born in the fire of restraint. You're not broke, you're distracted, you're not poor, you're programmed to consume. To envy, to believe that wealth is the trophy of the loudest, not the quietest. But true wealth is silent, it's steady, it doesn't scream, it builds in secret. There is a law older than your paycheck, a rhythm deeper than the market, a code of provision that doesn't bend to inflation or recession. It's the law of first things, of sowing before reaping, of honoring what you already have so you can be trusted with what you've asked for. They told you you're behind, that you need to catch up, but you're not in a race, you're in a test, and the only thing being measured is your trust. Will you still plant when the ground looks dry? Will you still give when fear says hold back? This is how the law separates the anxious from the aligned. The trap of debt isn't just financial, it's mental, it's emotional. It convinces you that you need more to be secure. So you sacrifice your soul to feed your image, but your image does save you, it enslaves you. Let it go. You are not called to perform prosperity. You are called to produce it, in silence, in diligence, in sacred stewardship of what seems small, because the small things test the heart, and the heart determines the harvest. They won't teach this in business school, because this kind of provision isn't profitable to the system. It's slow, it's spiritual, it requires faith, not frenzy, but when you live by it, you walk with peace even in famine, because your source is no longer the world. You will be tested, not when you lack but when you have. When the overflow comes, will you remember the principles that brought it? Or will you return to chaos disguised as lifestyle? Abundance without wisdom is still slavery. The ancient law doesn't promise you luxury, it promises you sufficiency. And sufficiency is greater than excess, because it never asks you to sell your soul. It teaches you how to keep what matters most. When the numbers don't make sense, this is how you escape. You think you're trapped by numbers, but you're actually trapped by your beliefs. You believed money would save you. You believed more would mean peace. But the more you had, the louder the fear grew, because you never fixed the route. You just covered it in gold. Just covered it in gold. You bought things that were never yours to carry. Debt is not just what you owe to banks, that's what you owe to the parts of you that were silenced. The gifts you buried under bills, the calling you postponed for comfort. You didn't go broke chasing money, you went broke avoiding truth. This is how it happens. Slowly, subtly, you trade clarity for clutter, purpose for pressure. You make deals with voices that promised security, but delivered anxiety, and you wonder why you can't sleep, because your soul was never built to serve numbers. You can't serve two masters. Either your money obeys your mission, or your mission gets rewritten to chase money. One builds legacy, the other builds noise. And when the noise fades, you're left with nothing but receipts and regret. Provision begins when you reclaim authority. You stop letting lack define you. You stop letting trends dictate your timeline. You stop giving power to urgency and start listening to alignment, that inner pull that whispers, be still, obey, trust. You were never meant to live in survival mode. Survival is reactive, but stewardship is intentional. Survival spends, stewardship sows. Survival begs for more. Stewardship multiplies what it already has. Here is the secret. You don't need more to start. You need obedience with what you already hold. That unused skill, that dormant idea, that neglected discipline. They're not small, they're seeds. And seeds don't look like trees until you water them in silence. You've been praying for miracles but ignoring instructions. Provision comes with a blueprint, and the blueprint often looks like simplicity. Live below your means. Honor the unseen. Tell your soul no when the world says yes. Real freedom is not having whatever you want, it's wanting what aligns with your purpose. It's the power to say, I don't need that to feel full. And that kind of power can't be bought. It's built in hidden battles. The debt trap feeds on urgency. It tells you to act fast, to fill the void now, to numb the pain now. But real provision is patient. It doesn't panic, it doesn't chase, it moves when it's time, not when the world screams. You've been lied to, that they told you ambition was the answer. But without discipline, ambition is just noise. It buys big things with small wisdom, and then wonders why it feels empty in a mansion. You don't need more ambition, you need alignment, and that's a quieter path, but one that actually leads home every time you obey. A principle, you rewrite your legacy. You may not see the harvest today, but roots are growing, depth is forming, and when the storm comes, you won't panic because you're planted. Let others chase, let others perform. You will build slow, you will build strong. And when the noise fades, your peace will still stand, because it wasn't built on credit, it was built on conviction. You don't need permission to begin. Start with the little. Buy what you can. Cut what you must. Discipline is louder than desire, and if you do what others won't, you'll live how others can't. This is the ancient way. Not sexy, not shiny, that's sacred. It doesn't promise luxury, it promises legacy. And legacy is louder than luxury because it outlives you. So take inventory, of your accounts, but of your alignment. Where is your trust? Where is your peace leaking? Where are you obeying fear instead of faith? It's not too late, you're not too deep. Even if you feel buried, you're not buried, you're planted. And planted things rise in the season. Shift. Provision is not random. It's the reward of trust. Trust in principles. Trust in discipline. Trust in discipline. Trust in discipline. Trust in timing that doesn't make sense to the world, but makes perfect sense to your soul. And the breakthrough you crave is not outside of you. It's on the other side of obedience. Not just financial obedience, emotional obedience, mental obedience, but kind that says, I refuse to serve fear anymore. That's how the trap loses its power. Not when you escape debt, but when debt stops owning your decisions. When you stop making choices based on fear. When you start building like your future depends on it, because it does. They told you debt was normal, that everyone lives this way. But you weren't made for average, you were made for alignment. And alignment always looks radical to the misaligned. Let them stare, let them doubt. You're not living for applause, you're living for freedom. Freedom is not a finish line, it's a mindset, it's a standard, it's a choice you make daily to build with restraint, to live with clarity, and to serve no voice that contradicts your purpose. When you live this way, you'll walk different, you'll spend different, you'll speak different, not out of pride, but out of peace. And peace is the currency that never crashes. So no, you're not stuck, you're not behind, you're not disqualified, you're in the middle of the making. The fire isn't burning you, it's refining you. And what comes out of this will carry weight for generations. And when you finally breathe, really breathe, not because the debt is gone, but because the fear is gone, that's when you'll know. You didn't just escape, you overcame. And now you lead others out. You made it this far, not because it was easy, but because something in you refused to quit, even when the numbers screamed. Even when the world mocked, you chose to walk by conviction, not by sight. And that changes everything. You're no longer just escaping debt, you're dismantling an old identity. The one who overspent for validation, the one who hid pain behind purchases, the one who feared lack more than they trusted. Truth, that version of you is gone, buried, and what's rising now is a steward. A steward doesn't need applause, a steward doesn't chase urgency, a steward plants in famine. A steward waits in silence. A steward multiplies what others waste. And that's why the system fears you, because you don't follow it. Anymore you transcend it. You're dangerous now. Not because of how much you own, but because of how little owns you. Know. More chains to credit. No more slavery to trends. You walk free, and freedom makes you unpredictable, powerful, aligned. This is the law of provision. When you align with wisdom, provision follows obedience. When you honor the small, multiplication begins in the unseen. When you walk by faith, doors open that money could never buy. The world builds towers on sand, but you build on rock. On principle, on discipline, on reverence. So when their towers fall, your house will still be standing, because it wasn't built fast, it was built faithful. And now, you lead. You don't just survive this season, you light the path for others. You show them that slow is holy, that less is sacred, that peace is more valuable than any possession, and that obedience is always worth it. Some will laugh at your restraint. Let them. Some will misunderstand your simplicity. Let them, they don't know the cost you paid for peace. They didn't see the nights you cried, but still obeyed, and now they won't understand the weight of your freedom. You didn't escape the trap by chance. You escaped by choice. Daily choice. Silent sacrifice, invisible victories. And every one of those small, hidden acts was a brick in the new house you're building. A house of peace, a house of wisdom. A house that outlives you. So stand tall, not in pride, but in purpose. Because you no longer walk in debt. You walk in dominion, not because you have it all, but because you've mastered what matters. And now, the world no longer owns your voice. You are the remnant, the rebel against greed, the proof that obedience pays. And while others run in circles, you rise in silence, rooted, still, certain. Let them chase noise. You've chosen substance, let them buy approval. You've chosen peace, let them panic. You've chosen provision. And now, nothing can shake you, because you didn't just leave debt behind. You buried the mindset that built it. You rewrote the story. You chose the ancient path. And now, your life becomes the parable. The one that says, a person once walked into lack, but they didn't panic. They planted, they obeyed, they waited, and they multiplied. Not by force, but by faith. This is you now, a living blueprint. Not perfect, but powerful. Not wealthy by the world's definition, but rich where it matters. Peace in your chest. Clarity in your path. Provision in your silence. So go, live like you've already won. Spend like your soul matters. Build like your children are watching. Speak like your voice can break chains. And give like lack never owned you, because it never did. Fear only had the power you gave it. Debt only lived in the shadow of your delay. But now the light is here, and shadows don't survive the sun. Your freedom doesn't shout, it walks. Your provision doesn't flex, it flows. And your future, it won't be built on fear but on ancient truth. And when they ask you how you did it, you won't talk about hustle, you'll talk about holiness. You'll talk about surrender. You'll talk about the power of saying no to everything that wasn't aligned. And in the quiet, you'll smile, not because you got everything, but because you know longer need everything. That you have peace, you have purpose, you have provision. And no one can ever take that away.